one of the things I tell men, Jeff, is that sometimes they're the arbiters of their own pain.
Mm.
In behavior modification, you can't have what's called positive reinforcement where you're more or less, or negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement. And I know there needs to be what's called negative homeostasis instead of positive homeostasis in family systems. And a lot of times what happens with a lot of men, they compromise their power because they assume, Jeff, that if they do what the wife say, then they're going to get their needs met. But what I've seen and known in my lifetime being married for 29 years, but also understanding the nature of women is that women only respect power and strength. That's all they respect. And when you don't stand on masculine principles, when you don't stand on business, when you're constantly tap dancing and trying to bojangle and whatever, women don't respect that. You be very clear. You be very calm. You be very concise. You say what you mean what you say. And either she's down or she's not down, and you just walk away. But so many men compromise their power, Jeff, because they don't know how much power that they really have. Harriet Tubman was very powerful in her pronouncements when she said that I could have freed a lot more if they did not already know that they were slaves. But not only that, Frederick Douglass said that power never conceded to anything without a struggle. It never have, and it never will. And so there's a power dynamic, Jeff, that's permeating in the minds of a lot of men where they have not necessarily seen men like yourself and I that are more or less exemplars of masculinity, but not only exemplars of masculinity, men that are trying to let men know that they, not only do they have power, but they don't have to be subjugated to the emotional whims of the women that they're dealing with. And so therefore, I blame some of the men for some of the pain that they talk about. You can't be the arbiter of your own pain and continue to complain about it. I've seen it many times in couples therapy. There was a gentleman that I was trying to help. And I pointed out his rationalization, which was ego defense mechanisms, and he knew what I was saying was correct, but he felt bad. But instead of fighting the power, fighting through the modern zeitgeist that we have, he didn't fight it. He told me, I decided to forego my last therapy sessions. And, Jeff, you from Philly, I'm from North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things people do, I was trying to take him, Jeff, to Man University, but he wanted to go to SIMU. So I would say, he was going to SIMU, Jeff. I was trying to take him to Man U. And he said, after careful consideration, I decided to forego my last therapeutic sessions and go to SIMU. So they always go back to SIMU because they are slaves to the emotional whims of a woman. I've listened to some of the things, Jeff, you said a couple of times on your podcast. I've listened to you a couple of podcasts, some of the things you said. And I know you were married at one point in the past. What did you learn about your marriage from the past that you brought into the new relationship that would not sabotage you as a masculine man?
Exactly what you said. Number one, establishing early on what you will and won't do, what you will and won't accept, and actually sticking to it. I think a lot of what we're experiencing now is actually the result of what you said about men constantly compromising and orbiting their identity, their role, and their behavior around their women's feelings. And that being the most central important thing in the confines of a relationship. And that's very problematic. Number one, if the most central important factor that's guiding your life, your principles, and the way you move is not the oath, it's not the loyalty, it's not the commitment, it's not the marriage itself, it's your wife or girlfriend's feelings. You can see how that could be extremely problematic. One, feelings don't stay the same. They're not constant. And number two, as you stated earlier, you cannot actually satisfy them long term. They will always feel like a very short-term gratification experience. And an example I gave, and I actually raised it recently with a client of mine, where I asked her what's one of her hobbies, and she mentioned that she really, really loves bags, custom bags and luxury bags. And I said to her, describe to me what was your first bag when you first got that first luxury bag, when you first were able to afford it, like what was it like? And she just described, like, she went back in time and she just said like how amazed she was and how happy she was. She just was taking it with her everywhere. And I said, so you've been collecting bags now for about 20 years? And she said, yeah. And I said, even though you still do it now, do you notice that you don't feel the same exact way you felt that first time? And yet you although you still do it now, do you notice that like you don't have the same reaction, you don't have the same emotional reaction response, your dopamine triggers nothing's feeling quite the same as that first time.
Right.
And what I'm arguing is that when you take that concept and apply it to relationships, a lot of times when women say like they'll describe things in terms of what their male counterpart is or isn't doing, And I would argue sometimes that even if he is doing it, you get used to it. It doesn't affect you emotionally the same way. And now you're not only feeling like, well, now we now have to add something new to get that same feeling.
Right.
But now they're also comparing what they are and aren't experiencing in their regular relationships. They're comparing it to their girlfriends and what they're seeing on social media. So the end result is you've now trapped your male counterpart into a vicious cycle where he's placed you on a pedestal and he's looking up at you and you're looking down at him.
Right.
One is the adored and one's the adorer. And it turns out that for a lot of women, they actually aren't satisfied and actually aren't happy being
Yes.
on a pedestal because
Right.
a lot of them want to be in a relationship with the man that they look up to and can be led
Yes.
by.
Right.
Not
I
the man
totally
who
agree.
is constantly
Totally agree.
trying to chase behind them to keep them happy.
Yes,
So
sir.
they
I agree.
created the paradigm that they unfortunately aren't actually happy with. And now that's when they start speaking and talking and stating how they've settled and they could do better, and their friends are encouraging them to move on. And before you know it, they're looking for all the various forms of confirmation bias to justify why it is that they can see him as primarily being the issue, him being the problem, and that if in the end, regardless of the commitment and promises that they made, they can leave and they'll be justified because in the end, my worldview, my confirmation bias, and everybody around me on social media and in person is basically saying if there's an issue in this relationship, ultimately he's at fault. And the most central important thing is not the kids, it's not the marriage or my overcommitment, it is my happiness.